Thank you, Joe. And I want to thank all of the speakers on this webinar. Um, I agree with everything that has been said. It's been well said, with one possible exception. Sarah has a more a deeper uh, explanation for why the U.S. acts as it does toward Israel than I think is warranted. I think the answer is more simplistic than what she ascribes. But uh, let me approach it from two angles. We're talking, one, about the cruelty that is imposed upon Palestinians every day. And that wants us to, anybody who watches this that has any kind of objective reaction has to be horrified that the rest of the world would allow this wanton cruelty and oppression to continue, as it has really, as was said, for about 75 years. I do think there's some commonality with the way in which African Americans have been treated in the United States. They, for generations, had been considered the other, if you will, that they were almost subhuman, or certainly not from the same tribe, that they were inferior, and that you could punish them with impunity just to keep them in line. And that persisted for, as we know, for hundreds of years. Finally, in the 60s, there was a civil rights movement, and it was actually, I think, interestingly but importantly, it should be noted that much of that civil rights movement was led by young Jewish people who were responding from an understanding of the teachings of the Enlightenment and many of the European philosophers that had much to do with the U.S. approach to human rights. And so it had turned around too slowly, obviously. Now we have a situation where it's being magnified. It's being put in the face and the conscience of the American people. And we're able to use technology. I think now the people who imposed that kind of vicious, consistent cruelty, particularly law enforcement, realize that that's no longer acceptable within our culture. The same thing kind of has to happen with regard to the treatment of Palestinians. I do think with this new government, there's going to be more and more provocative moves taken, knowing that there will be a reaction. As of yesterday, I think there had been 149 people that were described as having lost their lives in this conflict. 29 of them were Israelis. It only takes one, really, to get the kind of overreaction that the right wing, particularly in Israel, wants, because that will continue to lead to more aggression in terms of taking over the West Bank and ultimately much of the Gaza Strip as well. And that's the objective, what they call a greater Israel. They want to push out people that they feel are inferior, frankly, to them and their objectives. So on the one hand, I think maximum visibility, use of technology, and keeping the experience of Palestinians in front of the world's eyes and conscience is necessary. And it needs to be more than Al Jazeera doing that. But then there's a larger issue, and that's the ongoing injustice of what has happened to the Palestinian people, beginning with 750,000 being displaced from their homes and now being treated being kept in an open air prison. It is apartheid. It has some commonality, again, using the US with what happened to indigenous people in North America. They live on reservations now. The best they can hope for is to get a casino and make some money and acquire some power. We can't let that happen to the Palestinian people. So what do we do about it? Well, let me get to Sarah, because I just saw her face pop up. She feels as though keeping the Middle East in a state of conflict and I won't try to paraphrase her words, but it's simpler than that. It's about domestic politics, and it always has been. The majority of people who contribute to the Democratic Party in America have Jewish surnames. Now think about that. The Jewish population in the United States is it's less than 10%. I think at one point it was about 3%. It was about the same as the Muslim population. But the majority of money being contributed to the Democratic Party, and that didn't even include people, Smith, Brown, and so on, who don't have Jewish surnames. And now the same thing has happened with the Republican Party. In fact, just today, about an hour ago, Ilhan Omar was removed from the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House by the Republican majority. Almost all Democrats voted against doing that. The problem, again, as I say, is domestic politics. And I think that the way that we deal with this is not by finding fault with the people in the United States whose principal reason for contributing to the political system in America has been the sine qua non of the support for Israel, and unqualified support for Israel. That's changing, and it will change. And that is the real hope for what is going to for future generations. Ironically, but understandably, Bibi Netanyahu's new government is going to facilitate that. What they're doing is intolerable in the judiciary and in other ways. This is not consistent in any way with the majority of people who live in Tel Aviv, and certainly not with the majority of people who are Jewish in the United States, most of whom are secular. They see what's going on. And what's going to have to happen is that Muslim and particularly Arab leaders are going to have to work with the Jewish community, who has found a way to use the American political system. And we have to make sure it's being used in a positive way. I got involved in this, much to my political peril, by a young Jewish activist. As I say, in the 60s, when the civil rights movement was really given birth to, it was young Jewish activists. While I hate to get too ethnic about this, there is a realism here that I think is important to fully understand. This system, even though in the United States, where we have the most wealth, we have the strongest military, and we have the most influence, it's available to anyone. The people who support Israel realize this is the way to ensure Israel's survival and its prosperity. And as several previous speakers have said, it worked. And more than $3 billion a year is provided to subsidize everything the Israeli government does. And then that doesn't even include what's in the black budget, which is larger, and it doesn't include many of the defense contracts that are provided. So there's no question, but all of it is subsidized by the United States. And there's no question that the US government, whether it be Democratic or Republican, does not use that leverage. They do not, because they are afraid to run the risk of losing the support of the community who is most deeply involved in the political process and the most generous. In terms of the Muslim/Arab population, it's almost non-existent. And of the people who do speak up, people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and others, they're too far to the left to have much credibility on other policies or to have the kind of following that they need. And here you have the majority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the House up until January, Steny Hoyer, and they have consistently been in Israel's pocket, if you will. That is going to change as a new generation changes. And I think the politics of Israel vis-a-vis the United States is going to change. But what we need is a deliberate strategy to unite young Muslim and Arab activists with young Jewish activists, so that people see this is not an ethnic clash, that this is people united together in pursuit of values that they share. If we don't do that, if we have the kind of divisions that some people would like to see in the United States for their own purposes and throughout Europe, then I don't think things are going to change. But my guess is that this government is a pivot point. I think Bibi went too far. He was just too ambitious, and he pulled in people to his cabinet that are going to embarrass him every single day. And they could not be less reflective of the founding principles of the Jewish state. Even though I have issues, obviously, in the way that the rest of the world created it, it was formed on the basis of an assumption of democracy and of human rights, and that people will be judged on the way they treat the other. It is every day it seems to go further away from those founding principles. So I think this is the time for action, but it's got to be action that is concerted, that is well thought out, and that takes advantage of the people who are willing to stand up and speak out for what's right. People who are guided by some of the people on campuses, like Edward Said and others. And when I listened to Adam Shapiro representing Dawn, I'm so glad that Dawn was established. I was somewhat involved in the establishment, and to have leaders like that, it gives me great hope. I think things can change. I think they will change, and I think they must change. So I'll leave it at that. I think I've used up 10 minutes.
Thank you, Jim. And yeah, I just want to quickly address the obviously quite controversial issue of funding in support of pro-Israeli positions, politicians and so on in the US, and the question of Jewishness. And I will simply say that I agree with your emphasizing, firstly, the importance of solidarity across national and religious and ethnic lines and so on. But I think we need to emphasize the important thing is the politics of the money rather than the ethnicity of the people giving it. And I don't know if you'd agree with that, Jim, or if
Well-
perhaps I mistook what you
Joe,
what you had.
I'm glad you raised that.
Mhm.
Being in the Congress for 24 years,
Mhm.
I'm sensitive to what you're saying.
Mhm.
But in looking where the money went, particularly to leadership in both parties,
Mhm.
it was a sine qua non. Absolute unqualified support for Israel because there was a clear identification on the
Mhm.
part of people who chose to get involved in politics,
Mhm.
and Israel was a major motivating reason.
Mhm.
But their children
Mhm.
are still involved in politics.
Mhm.
I think it's been wonderful for the United States, frankly.
Mhm.
I wish we hadn't excluded as many refugees from World War II as we did.
Mhm.
But those children now have a different perspective,
Mhm.
and I think we need to use that perspective. You're saying that it's politics, but ethnicity sometimes drives politics. It
Mhm.
did with the Irish. It does with many others, and the diaspora in the United States, wherever they're from,
Mhm.
they have been ruling our political system.
Mhm.
In fact, Franklin Roosevelt said to Stalin at Malta, he said, "Now I need to talk to you about a domestic political issue that I have to deal with." And Stalin says, "What's that?" And he said, "Poland." We are a collection of ethnicities. I don't think that's going to last forever, but right now it's the case, and they do drive politics, and I want them to drive politics toward a more just world, and so that's the reason I mentioned that.
I understand. No, I understand. Thank you for
And I don't want to sound anti-Semitic, and
No, I
heck,
understand.
Palestinians are Semitic people.
I
I'm just
understand.
saying that let's deal with the political reality in the United States that's driving and reinforcing the injustice that's occurring within Palestine.